Wilmington, Delaware. A city small in size, but for years, it carried a violent secret that played out on its corners, back alleys, and the glow of Facebook Live. This wasn't just crime. This was organized chaos. And at the center of it all, STK Shoot to Kill, a crew that wore its name like prophecy. Their rival, UMB, just 3 letters, but enough to trigger war. You wouldn't know it walking through some parts of Wilmington, but this was a city where kids didn't just grow up. They grew into something else. Survival didn't come with age. It came with affiliation. Either you were with it or you were in the way. And in 2016, that line got someone killed. Brandon Wingo, 15 years old. He wasn't in any gang. No colors, no flags, no corner. Just a student. But that didn't matter the day STK came looking for a target. The way the state tells it, 2 names kicked the whole thing off. Diamond Taylor and Zahir Smith. They were young. One barely out of high school, the other still close enough to remember it. But by May 2016, they were plotting like veterans. It started in Newark. Taylor and Smith armed themselves and began testing the streets. Robberies, setups, riding around looking for opportunity. One victim was forced into their car at gunpoint, driven around, then dumped. Days later, they took that act to Wilmington, specifically Thatcher Street. But this time, something went wrong. Or maybe, depending on how you look at it, something went exactly how they planned. A robbery turned into a shooting. A bullet caught Brandon Wingo in the head. He died there on the pavement without ever knowing why. This wasn't random. And it wasn't just a one-off. This was part of a wave. According to court documents, STK wasn't just a group of friends. It was a street gang. Structured, violent, known to retaliate against OMB, and known to do it loudly. Social media lit up with cryptic captions, gang hashtags, and hand signs caught on camera. You had kids as young as 13 on Facebook, flashing signs they barely understood but were ready to kill over. After Wingo's murder, everything shifted. The state cracked down. Taylor was caught and tried for murder in the first degree, among other charges: assault, weapons possession, gang participation. The list was long. The sentence? Life plus 11. Smith took a different route. He pled out. Robbery, attempted robbery, weapons and conspiracy. He got 21 years. But even then, the case was far from over. Because in the background, the prosecution was building something deeper. They weren't just charging individuals, they were laying out an entire narrative. STK wasn't acting alone. It was a system, a machine, and social media was its PR department. Expert witnesses were brought in to explain the language of the streets. One in particular, Daniel Massey, testified about gang signs, affiliations, and how posts on Instagram and Facebook were direct indicators of intent. But Massey overstepped. He interviewed Taylor himself without a lawyer present and testified about what Taylor said. That opened the door to a mistrial motion. Because now it wasn't just about who pulled the trigger. It was about whether the system prosecuting them played by the rules. By December 2023, that argument found traction. A mistrial was granted, not because Taylor didn't do it, but because the court process stumbled. But Wingo's death wasn't the end of STK's story. It was barely the midpoint. In 2017, another name hit the news: Dion Wharton. Just 20 years old, Wharton was accused of killing 18-year-old Yasim Powell, a known OMB affiliate. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This was a hit. Wharton was convicted: murder, conspiracy, illegal firearm possession, carrying concealed weapons. He got 28 years minimum. The body count kept growing. This was bigger than one case. This was a cycle. You could track it through the court records, but you could also see it on your phone. Posts would go up hours after a shooting: laughing emojis, gun emojis, RIP messages turned threats. Some were direct. Others hid behind coded captions only insiders could decipher. Prosecutors started combing through social media like it was a crime scene. Posts were screenshotted, translated by gang experts, and used as evidence. It wasn't just about who did what, it was about who claimed what. In a city like Wilmington, that line was thin. 1 minute you're mourning, the next you're a suspect. Even pastors were speaking out. CBS News ran a segment quoting one community leader saying gang culture wasn't hiding anymore. It was being celebrated online. Kids were repping sets on TikTok, claiming corners they didn't own. The internet made it easy to broadcast threats, but harder to defuse them. And that's what made the situation so dangerous. STK didn't just use guns, they used status. Public posts became power moves. Comments became challenges. And every action demanded a reaction. Wingo's death? It didn't just silence a young life, it ignited a chain reaction. Behind closed doors, the state was trying to make sense of it all. They had surveillance footage, phone records, forensic reports, but they also had a community that stopped trusting both sides. Victims stopped talking, witnesses disappeared, and jurors were expected to understand a world that was hidden in plain sight. Even with convictions, questions remained. How did it get this far? Where were the interventions when Taylor and Smith were first picked up for robberies? What about Wharton? Did anyone see the signs before he pulled the trigger? The truth is, these weren't masterminds. They were products of their neighborhoods, of a culture that didn't flinch at violence, of a justice system that often came in too late. You won't find baby pictures or elementary school report cards in the court files. What you find are charges, priors, mugshots, sentencing dates. You find a trail of destruction that started long before the first shot was fired. And in the middle of it all, a city still trying to recover. Wilmington didn't get closure. It got convictions. That's not the same thing. Brandon Wingo's family lives with the absence. Other families live with fear. And the streets? They're quieter now, maybe, but the code still lingers. STK isn't a name you just forget. And OMB hasn't vanished. There are always younger kids watching, learning, waiting for their own turn to retaliate or to survive. This is the story of STK, a gang born in the shadows of Wilmington streets, fed by revenge, amplified by the internet, and immortalized in courtroom transcripts. The law caught up to them eventually, but not before the damage was done. Brandon Wingo was 15, and that should have been the headline. But in this story, his death was just the beginning.